ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the movie Trivia Schmoedown.
Yeah, good evening here tonight. Who's ready for some matches, huh?
Let's Schmoedown. Questions are going to be asked to the field. They are each worth 1 point. Who plays Laura in the 2017 film Logan?
Daphne Keane.
Daphne Keane.
Round number 2, each competitor is going to get a spin at the wheel.
Final round 3 begins.
Niet.
No.
Sam Witwer has been eliminated.
Celebrity Schmoedown, free-for-all style.
Let me see.
Team Classic.
This is why we play the Schmoedown.
Rising Sun. And your winner.
It's MMA or boxing. It's like you want to see the two best scrapping it out.
The Schmoedown, as we know, we got a little bit of a WWE flavor to it.
And I'm going to give him a show in Chicago.
Get your tickets. We are coming with the fire. Movie Trivia Schmoedown.
Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of All My Movies, where I take one of my movies off the shelf, talk about the making of it, my personal memories of it. It's just a fun walk through my collection, and hopefully a fun walk through some of your favorite, or in the case of this month, perhaps least favorite movies, because as we enter February, we're entering our first theme month for the podcast. This is Bad Movie Month. And when I announced that this was going to be the theme last week, a lot of people said, like, no, Dan, we want to talk about movies you love, not movies you hate. Well, I will say, these are not all movies that I hate. A lot of these movies are deliciously bad. They're movies that I love to watch because they're bad. However, this week's movie is a movie that I hate. 2014's Transformers: Age of Extinction. The fourth in the Transformers franchise, and one that I really did not find it enjoyable to sit through again. However, I came to look at it with a brand new perspective, a perspective that surprised even me. So we're going to talk about the movie, really go through it beat by crazy beat, and go into some new discoveries that I made as I was watching the making of the film. But before we get into all that, I want to thank you for watching us. If you're watching on the Schmoedown Entertainment Network, or if you're listening to us as an audio podcast, I really appreciate your time. If you are a viewer and you want to hear the show, you can check us out on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, wherever you find your audio podcasts. And if you're listening to us and you want to check out the video version, you can find the show on YouTube on the Schmoedown Entertainment Network. Okay, let's get to this week's movie, Transformers: Age of Extinction. And right away, the question some of you might be asking is, Dan, if you hate this movie so much, why is it part of your collection? And, you know, when you love somebody, you take on the good things about them and the bad. And Transformers: Age of Extinction was definitely the worst thing about Mara. When we got together, when we moved in, we combined our movie collection. There was a lot of overlap. However, she had received this movie as a gift from somebody. I don't even remember who. Thus, it is now part of our collection and my collection. But I do think that good movies and bad movies are both interesting to break down for different reasons. And as we go through this month, I think we're going to see why each movie could be regarded as good or bad, sometimes simultaneously both, for all of these different reasons. Before we jump into Age of Extinction, a little bit of background information if you're not familiar with what the Transformers are. The Transformers started off as a toy line and a cartoon series back in 1984, featuring Optimus Prime, who was the leader of the heroic Autobots fighting against the evil Decepticons and their leader, Megatron.
Transformers, Transformers.
The Transformers TV series ran through 1987 with a big event, the Transformers animated movie, happening in 1986, but the show and the toys lived well past the run of the original TV series, and so as the turn of the 21st century came and a proposed adaptation of the G.I. Joe toy line was delayed, Paramount and Hasbro turned their eyes toward adapting Transformers into the next big feature film franchise. The Transformers live-action franchise entered active development in the year 2003, and in 2004, they landed a big-name Steven Spielberg to serve as an executive producer on the films. And in 2005, action director Michael Bay signed on to direct the first film in the franchise. All of the first 3 films starred Shia LaBeouf as Sam Witwicky, a normal California teen who is befriended by Optimus Prime, and the two of them spend 3 movies defending the world from the evil Decepticons, who are led again by Megatron.
It's you and me, Megatron. No, it's just me, Prime. At the end of this day, one shall stand, one shall fall.
While the third Transformers film, Transformers Dark of the Moon, was the most financially successful of the franchise worldwide, it had crossed over $1 billion. That was the first Transformers film to do so. There were already some signs that the franchise needed a new coat of paint. First of all, one of the stars of the original 2 films, Megan Fox, had already been fired from the series after she said of director Michael Bay, quote, "He wants to be like Hitler on his sets, and he is, so he's a nightmare to work for." With Megan Fox already out, star Shia LaBeouf also announced that he was going to be gone after the third film in the series, and originally Michael Bay announced his departure from the franchise as well, although he would be lured back to direct this movie, the 4th installment, as well as the 5th installment, Transformers The Last Night. Transformers Dark of the Moon also showed signs of fading domestically, with a $50 million drop-off between the second film, Revenge of the Fallen, and the third film, Dark of the Moon. But its international take improved by over $300 million from film to film as the global worldwide box office market began to expand. And so a decision was made to give the entire franchise an overhaul with an eye on a more global perspective and a new cast. Mark Wahlberg was cast as the new lead of the franchise, Texan inventor Cade Yeager, while Nicola Peltz was cast as his daughter Tessa, with Jack Rayner playing her race car driving boyfriend Shane. TJ Miller was also added to the ensemble as Lucas, Cade's ill-fated best friend. Adding prestige to the cast were Stanley Tucci as corporate mogul Joshua Joyce, Kelsey Grammer as government puppet master Harold Attinger, and Titus Welliver as enforcer James Savoy. In key supporting roles, the film also added Sophia Myles and Li Bingbing. Full disclosure, I was never a huge fan of the Transformers franchise, and I don't just mean the films, I mean everything in general. I wasn't allowed to watch the show when I grew up because it was too violent, so I brought none of that nostalgia to anything that so many of my other friends did. I saw the first film, 2007's Transformers, on DVD, and I thought it was a little long, but I liked it okay. It wasn't the best thing I'd ever seen, but it wasn't the worst. The second film, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, gave me as close to a migraine headache as I could possibly imagine having. I was watching it in preparation to do the Honest trailer at my computer, and I had to get up a few times and just walk around because the movie was making me physically anxious. It was so frenetic and scattered and all over the place. The third film, Transformers Dark of the Moon, left me largely apathetic. At this point, it really had just beaten me into submission. But with the semi-reboot, you've got Mark Wahlberg now in the lead, you have a new storyline. I went into Transformers Age of Extinction hopeful that this would be the Transformers movie for me. Instead, it ended up being the Transformers movie that I hated the most. And it wasn't even close. So to appreciate my thoughts on Transformers Age of Extinction, and if you haven't seen it really, just to educate you on this movie, why don't we just revisit the movie beat by beat? I'll point out some of the things that I noticed as I was watching it. It'll be fun, and it'll be about 2.5 hours shorter than the actual movie, so it's really just a great catch-up. We open the movie in dinosaur times when we see some spaceships hovering over Earth and dropping a strange bomb that covers the Earth's surface with this molten lava stuff. It turns out that asteroids didn't kill the dinosaurs. Transformers did. Then we move on to, as it's called on screen, Texas, USA, where American picker Cade Yeager and his best friend Lucas are scavenging in an old movie theater looking for stuff to reinvent and build.
The movies nowadays, that's the trouble. Sequels and remakes, bunch of crap.
Yeah, that's the old let's lampshade the tired sequel joke where you think if you point out the fact that you're in a tired sequel that it excuses the fact that it is a tired sequel. Doesn't work for me in this movie. Also, something I wanted to point out that seems a little weird about this scene, it seems like the movie wants us to believe that Cade and Lucas are the same age. And then the end credits roll to the song Battle Cry by Imagine Dragons, which I will freely admit I really like. Transformers Age of Extinction was released on June 27th, 2014 in the United States and Canada, and it would ultimately become the lowest grossing Transformers film domestically, dropping almost $100 million from the preceding film Transformers Dark of the Moon. That didn't matter though, because it also took in over $300 million in China, which at that time topped Avatar to become the highest grossing film ever released in the country. This was also the first Transformers film that I saw in a theater. I saw it at the Vista Theater in Los Angeles, one of my favorite theaters in town, a great single screen theater that I really hope makes it through everything that's going on right now, and I hated this movie. Right around the time we got to that action climax in the skies over Chicago, and I looked at my watch and realized that there was an hour left in this movie, I didn't care about anybody. I didn't want to see how it ended. I really had no interest. I wanted to just get up and leave and never think about it again. But I stayed because I was working for Screen Junkies at the time, and I knew that we were going to be doing an honest trailer for this movie, and I wanted to start writing it in my head as soon as possible. So I stayed, I watched the rest of it, and then we did end up writing an honest trailer together for this movie. As part of a gag, we wrote the last third of the trailer in Chinese, because we thought if the movie does the last third in China, then it'd be funny to do the last third of the honest trailer in China, basically saying that we're going to pander to the Chinese audience much the same way the film did.
Hey, guys, why is the rest of this trailer written in Chinese?
预告片大叔，谢谢你咯。
Hey!
As timing would have it, a very nice lady came to record the Chinese lines, and I was the only person that was available at the time to record with her. So we went into the literal closet that was our recording booth, and, we had the script in English, and she would sit and translate what we were supposed to say, and then she would do the lines, into our recorder, and then she would look up at me and she'd go, "How was that?" I don't speak Chinese. I don't even really know how Chinese is supposed to sound, so I just would say, "Sounded great," and then we'd go on to the next one. So I honestly don't know how the Chinese sounds in the Transformers Age of Extinction honest trailer. I hope it sounds good, but she went to me for my approval, so I guess ultimately I'll take the credit if it didn't sound good, but to be honest, I didn't really know how it was supposed to sound to begin with. I'll still take the heat though.
电影最后还有恐龙的出现，但是只有少少5分钟而已，不要太期待。最后，中国万岁！
In a weird way, though, Transformers Age of Extinction was both a high point and the point of no return for this franchise, because it did cement the fact that it was a waning franchise domestically. 2017's Transformers The Last Knight would only gross $130 million in the US and Canada, which was a far cry from the heights of the $400 million gross of Revenge of the Fallen just 8 years previously. The worldwide gross for the next film would also fall drastically by over $500 million to just over $600 million, which is largely because the Chinese film market, even in just the 3 years between films, grew exponentially. It just seemed that audiences kind of had a been there, done that feel for these films. Bumblebee, which was a much hyped and actually critically well-regarded spin-off film, also didn't perform great anywhere in the world. It did fine, but not exceptionally well. And we're kind of in a no man's land right there with these Transformers films. There have been talks of a reboot, there's been talks of a Bumblebee sequel, or some kind of a continuation of sorts of the live action films, but with even more of a refresh start. But this is the first time since the early 2000s where the long-term future of the Autobots and the Decepticons really does seem to be in doubt, at least on movie screens. Ever since watching this film, my mind has kind of made up these preconceived notions about particularly Michael Bay, because I see things like the green screen monitor, the Willis/Sears Tower in the background of that shot, the utter contempt for anything regarding a 3-act story structure, and I just kind of thought, Michael Bay doesn't care. He's phoning it in. He's lazy. He's just cashing a paycheck. But I sat down and watched the special features on this disc, as I do for all the discs, and I'm actually very happy that this movie had a wealth of over 3 hours of behind-the-scenes making-of stuff, because I actually think that my preconceived notions about Michael Bay were entirely wrong. When you look at the making of this movie, you don't see a lackadaisical director who's in it for a paycheck, and you certainly don't see a sleepwalking crew. You see a group of really talented artisans who are doing everything they possibly can to make the impossible possible, whether that is hand carving and detailing a remodeled version of the cars used in the movie.
There's a lot of effort and heart and soul that go into each of the vehicles that we make. When all is said and done, this car will probably have around 3,000 hours in it.
Or a prop department building the massive swords that are actually physically there on lockdown ship.
Some of the swords were 30 feet long. They're enormous, and they were hung up on these giant hooks.
You see locations crews and camera departments lugging equipment to film in magical locations that had never been filmed in at this scale before.
Most of the crew walks down 1,263 steps to get into the canyon.
Every day, everybody walks in and out.
But most importantly, and this is the first time I've really seen this kind of footage in depth and in detail, you see Michael Bay at work. And watching him make this movie, you can tell that this is a guy who loves making movies.
Okay, all right, let's get some eyes. You like that?
And when I say he loves making movies, I don't mean that he kind of loves the concept of making movies as a concept. I mean, he likes getting in it. Watch this footage. He's running around, he's shouting things into a bullhorn. He is so dedicated to the cinematic nature of everything that he's seeing. I never honestly thought that he was that energized of a director. I thought that he was just kind of looking at explosions on a monitor and saying like, whatever. No, this guy loves every day that he's on a movie set. Now, I do want to be very clear about something else. It does look like, from Michael Bay's words and from the people that are interviewed in a lot of these features, that working for Michael Bay is an absolute nightmare.
Guys, I don't need all you in the street. What do I need all you in the street for?
First the dress down and then...
Oh, no, the dress down only happens once in a while when I freak out.
And he keeps us on our toes, too. We don't always get a lot of warning when he wants to talk to us.
You then have two actors that are scared of heights. That's a whole other issue you got to deal with. I'm afraid of heights, but you basically get in their face and say, what are you doing? You're going to get up there. These guys are pros. Get on a cable. Let's go.
But I've got to be honest that Michael Bay is more of a visionary than I gave him credit for. He is committed to getting stuff in camera. He's always looking for new kinds of technologies to make his filmmaking more immersive. He is dedicated unflinchingly to the scale and scope of the movies that he's making so that they can be enjoyed on the big screen. As a matter of fact, the more that I thought about Michael Bay and the more that I watched him make movies, the more he seemed like another filmmaker working today who's praised for these same qualities. Christopher Nolan. Is it too out of the box to speculate that if Michael Bay committed his time to projects that had better screenplays, that turned out better in the end, that if he was a little less outwardly egocentric, a little less dismissive of his actors, able to get his thoughts across perhaps in a less confrontational way, that he could be regarded as one of the greater filmmakers working today? In the 14 years almost since the first Transformers came out, Michael Bay has only done 3 movies that aren't Transformers films. If we were to roll back time, let's say he never signed on to that first Transformers film, and he'd done 2 or 3 action movies that were on a scale of a movie like The Rock, or even one like Armageddon. Isn't it possible that he would have a much better reputation amongst film fans and, honestly, film critics than he does today? It's a really intriguing idea, and it makes me want to see Michael Bay make a movie where he's paired with a great writer and maybe somebody who has a little more care over something besides just the cinematic look of everything and the bigness of it. Because there are so many qualities that are admirable in what he's doing, qualities that for years I've never given him credit for. Now, I've given him a lot of crap, and I think a lot of it is deserved. The aspect ratio changes in The Last Night are not the informed choices that you would expect from a director who's really committed to a seamless cinematic vision. However, I do have to admit that watching these things, watching the craft behind this movie, I have severely underestimated Michael Bay's passion for filmmaking and his ability as a filmmaker. I don't think that excuses the way he acts towards a lot of his people on set. I don't think that means that his movies are any better in retrospect. As a matter of fact, rewatching this movie was a chore for me. It was a slog. I never want to watch this movie again for my entire life. But I do have a newfound respect for a lot of the artists that made it. People that I didn't think to show respect to earlier, people who I have shown disrespect to earlier. Filmmaking is a hard endeavor. No film is easy to make. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. And sometimes when a movie comes out that you don't like Transformers Age of Extinction, it's easy to overlook the people that worked really, really hard to make it. And this is something that may inform how I look at other movies as I'm going forward. Does it change my opinion of this movie? No, it doesn't change my opinion of this movie one bit. However, it does change my opinion of Michael Bay. I do see him now as a filmmaker who does deeply care about what he's doing. I just wish that he deeply cared about things that were better. As I mentioned, this Blu-ray copy of Transformers Age of Extinction is packed with some great special features, including an interview with Michael Bay about his philosophy on action, which is about what you would expect.
It's just, here's the menu of what I need to make my shots. I will tell you on the day, this is how we're going to do it. And let's cut this meeting short because I have other meetings to attend to.
There's also a series of documentaries that run about 2 hours in total about the making and development of this movie, including one about the casting and inception of the film.
Maybe I don't even say the Mandarin thing. Just say, you know I can't understand you when you're angry. Just totally disregard it. Do you know what I mean?
The vehicles and car stunts in the movie.
This is the 1959 Racing Stingray, and it also has a little Hollywood history also because Elvis Presley drove this car in the movie Clam Bake.
A feature about shooting in small town Texas.
Well, we're in Taylor, Texas. Small town. Yeah, it's a pretty quiet town. Nothing really happens.
All right, we're rolling. Ready?
Nothing big.
A look at filming the variety of different scenes that were shot in Detroit, Michigan.
Right, we all got soaked in there.
The film's move to shooting in China.
Just another day in Michael Bay world.
A rundown of bringing the Dinobots to the big screen.
Well, now we've got Grimlock, the dinosaur head with Optimus Prime riding along, and it's like classic Western shots, only it's a robot on a dinosaur.
And a look at the process of editing and doing the special effects for the film.
Optimus Prime is it's not a tongue-in-cheek thing. I had the influence of a brother and a former Marine. Roll out! Didn't like it. I get to do my brother, you know, because that's pretty much what he was, that hero to me.
And a pretty insightful and interesting documentary about the artists at Hasbro designing and building a Grimlock toy that was released in conjunction with the movie.
I'm just going to quickly inspect the part to make sure it looks pretty good.
There are many colors. We actually hand mix each color with lacquer paint.
And that pretty much wraps it up for Transformers Age of Extinction. It took me to some places that I didn't expect. I hope it took you to some places that you might not have expected, or perhaps at least it was a fun walk down memory lane. Or most importantly, perhaps it saved you the 2 hours and 45 minutes it takes to watch this film. Although, as I mentioned, there were some very impressive technical aspects to the movie. Next week, we move on from a bad movie that I don't particularly enjoy watching to one that I am very much looking forward to revisiting. It is the kind of movie that I sort of cackle as I watch in the theaters. The 2017 Dean Devlin weather disaster film Geostorm, with my 3 favorite words in the English language, starring Gerard Butler. It is hilariously bad, and I can't wait to recap it with all of you. But until then, it's time to go back on the shelf. See you